from Minnesota, and I just knew I was going to be moving to a ranch house with acres around and horses, and got here and found that it was just a regular house on a street with regular other houses. So it was kind of shocking because I thought Texas was all ranches and
Cowboys.
horses and cowboys. Went to Meadows, fourth grade, met friends there, and then I moved to Bowman in fifth grade and went to school with Johnny and Keith across the table, and just from there graduated in Plano, stayed in the area. I'm in Carrollton now, so I haven't moved far. Really like the area, and it was a great place to grow up.
Mary?
Well, let's see, the family moved here in 58, and I was born in 59. We were on a farm on the west side of town, so there's not many of us representing the west side here. We're kind of outnumbered here. But there was nothing west of Central Expressway back in the day. But yeah, born in 59 in McKinney because there was nowhere to be born in Plano at the time. And was raised out there on the farm and milked cows, hauled hay, chopped cotton, and showed up for cheerleading sometime in my overalls, and they laughed. But that was life on the west side. And, you know, Plano was just, we had 4 older brothers and a younger sister. There was 6 of us. And so it was fun watching it grow. It was kind of bittersweet because once it started growing, it was just full speed ahead. And we were moving schools around so much. Started at Sigler and then went to Wilson, then they sent us to Cox, then Haggard, and Plano Senior High then was built. So it's been fun. Still here in the area. Live up in Tioga, Texas now, but.
And the crazy thing is, 58, I can't imagine how many people were in Plano at the time. I know when I moved here in 73, there was just under 14,000. And by the time we graduated, it was close to 200, wasn't it? Yeah, it was
Yeah.
bad. So that was a big boom growth-wise.
Sure
Marty?
was.
Yeah, sort of following along. I guess my family moved here in 1963. I was a whole 3 years old. Was fortunate enough I got to attend the Dallas North Kindergarten, which used to be on 75, owned by the O'Reillys, if I'm not mistaken. But anyhow, 1963 opened Sigler Elementary School, and then moved from there to Wilson to Haggard, and Haggard to the senior high. So we did do some traveling, you know, as the schools were being developed. I always use the example when you want to talk about growth. We moved to Plano in 1963, just under 8,000 people. My brother graduated in 1974. He had about 350 people in his class. And then we graduated 1977, 1978. And, you know, we ended up having close to 1,500 just in a graduating class. So huge growth over, you know, a 4-year period of time, especially in the 70s. People were coming just like now, with people exiting from some of the blue states, moving into Texas, and we hope that they'll bring with them the reason why they left. So we're looking forward to that.
And then we have David is the old guy in the group. David is was a part of the 1971 state champ team, and Marty was part of 77 state champ team. So David has pretty much the same story as Marty, but please expand on it.
Well, of course, we moved here in '63. Went to school. Started at little houses over in west side of town. Went from the houses to Sigler. From Sigler to Bowman, and from Bowman to what now is Williams Junior High. That was our high school.
Now I tell you this, the great thing we were sharing this morning when we were talking was David went to Bowman back when Bowman was 7, 8, 9, and David still holds one of his records at Bowman in track and field and shot put. Still holds the shot put record there. Julie.
We moved here from Indiana in 1970, so I didn't move here till 6th grade, and I lived in Canyon Creek, so I was actually in Richardson. So I went to Aldridge and didn't meet any of these people until seventh grade, right, at Wilson. And then didn't meet some of these guys till 10th grade,
High school.
really. And we were, Mary and I were, and probably Marty, we got sent around to other schools. So our sophomore year, we should have been at this, I guess it wasn't the senior high then, in the Plano High
Right.
School, but we were at Haggard.
Right.
So, and then my 3 kids went through Plano. And I was thinking, when we graduated, there was 850 something. When my daughter graduated in 1999, there was 1,500 people. And graduation was at Texas Stadium on the hottest day ever. It was miserable. You couldn't hear a thing. But I didn't realize when y'all graduated, there was that many.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for we graduated in 77, and 850 I thought was a lot
Yeah,
of people.
it was.
Well, we
And my
had-
last name was Young, so I
He
was at the
was
very
the boat
end.
at Moody Coliseum.
And then after Julie, we have Johnny, and Johnny at our reunion was cited as the person that lived in Plano the longest. Him and Reggie Stimson and Richard Wells. They were all 3 tied. We had one award. I think you walked away with it because you were the one that got handed it to you, and they weren't going to fight you for it.
You were fighting for it.
So Johnny Shanks.
My name is Johnny Shanks. I was born in McKinney in 1958, and as soon as I got out of the hospital, I moved to Plano. I've had family here in the area since basically the 1860s. So we weren't smart enough to buy land or anything, but we've been old timers. But I basically started my school at Mendenhall. We went to Bowman Junior High, went to the old Plano High School our sophomore year, and then senior year or senior went to the senior high. My family, we played a pretty major role in the fire department here in Plano. My uncle was the first paid fireman in Plano. He was the fire chief. My other uncle was the assistant fire chief. My father, he was a captain. So I grew up with a lot of firemen. But Plano started out, like I say, when I was a kid, it was a small town. I mean, it really was. We had one red light basically downtown on 15th and K, and that was pretty much it. Everybody knew everybody, that type of scenario. But Plano has grown substantially. But the thing is, I really think here as an old timer, basically, they've done it right. I mean, everything we've done has been, been quality. We haven't just, Plano's is a proud town. I'm proud to be from Plano. So that's about it for me.
Johnny talked about Mendenhall, and when they tore down Mendenhall, the old Mendenhall, and built the new Mendenhall, it was one of our classmates' little sister was the principal at Mendenhall, and I contacted Mrs. Dreyer, Kyle Dreyer's
Oh, wow.
She was the
daughter.
principal.
Kyle Dreyer's sister was the principal. So I contacted her and said, hey, when you're tearing it down, can you set up one of the bricks aside for me? I have a friend that really would like that for his trophy display case. Johnny has a brick from old Mendenhall. And then we have Keith Clough. Now, Keith was one of the first persons I met when I came to Plano, and ironically, we share the same birthday.
Yeah.
Veterans Day, 11/11.
Yep.
So Keith Clough.
Well, I was actually born in London, England, and stepped foot on U.S. soil when I was just about a year old, and we moved to Houston, and I lived in Houston until '69. Now, let me tell you that I was. We knew we were moving to Dallas. We were getting out of Houston, and Houston was not what it is today. Back then it was horrible. But anyway, we moved to Plano. I'd never heard of Plano until my mom got off the phone with my dad and said, well, I rented a house in Plano. That's where we're moving. I said, where's Plano? So we get here, and it was a culture shock, but the town just, moving from Houston, Texas, one of the largest cities in the United States, to a little 10,000 people Plano with one red light was a culture shock. But I got to tell you that the town it was so cool. The town you couldn't help but love the place. Just the old-fashioned values, and then, of course, in the Friday night, we'd never experienced high school football before, but, every person on this planet turned out their lights, locked their doors, and they went to the high school stadium on Friday nights. Man, it was just a tradition.
They didn't even lock the doors.
Oh, yeah, right, exactly.
Not back then.
But what's interesting, we were kind of talking about the growth a minute ago. Where I live now was right across the street from the old polo grounds. And the field didn't have a fence. And so we get back there in four-wheel. We figured out where I literally live right now is where we used to four-wheel. But I thanked my dad literally up till his passing here just recently, how grateful I am to move us from Houston to Plano, Texas. I mean, what an incredible place to call home. What an incredible place to grow up. And then I've got these family of friends that literally, I've had all of y'all are family to me, and we've, you know, stayed close all these years. So, yeah, my experience with Plano could not have been better.
Yeah, I was fortunate when my dad, as soon as he got an opportunity to move back and go back to work for RCA, he got the heck out of Plano. He did not like Texas. It was too hot. Everywhere you had to go, you had to drive. He did not like driving. He grew up in Philadelphia where everything was public transportation. He went back to work at RCA, and I was fortunate. I had friends like Keith's dad who helped raise me, and Marty's dad and mom. Pretty much Marty's mom. Mr. Melson was like a friend. Mrs. Melson was the hammer. They invited me to stay when we played high school and college baseball together. Marty and David and I played Colts baseball, and we used to beat the high school varsity teams with Brooks Wallace and them. We played them. We played one game, and David pitched both ends of the doubleheader.
Wow.
And won both games.
You know, what's interesting is I when I first moved to Plano, literally the very first friend that I made was Johnny, and then I was one of the first friends that Tom made when he got here. So, but Johnny kind of took me under his wing, and he's like, "Look, don't hang out with him and him, but stay away from him." So
Well,
yeah,
you weren't a Yankee, so I didn't. You know,
yeah, I wasn't a Yankee.
Treat you better.
I was a Texan, so you know it was different for me.
From England.
Yeah, from England.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next thing we could talk about is where did you, I'll always, like, when I taught driver's ed for like 20 some years, kids would say, Coach, how much did you pay for gas when you first started driving? I said, $42.7. $42.7 a gallon, and we used to buy it at the gas station across from Jack in the Box.
Yep.
Because Randy Mullins and Brett worked there. So we'd always go in the same gas station to wake them up. Hey, come out and pump some gas for me. But we have David, I think, was one of the first employees ever at Country Burger, back when Country Burgers were 79 cents. One of my first jobs in town was Donnelly's Flower Shop,
Yep.
and it was great because at Donnelly's, Mrs. Donnelly, all the employees got their mums paid for, their
Yep.
corsages paid for, all that
Yep.
kind of stuff when you went to homecoming and prom. So type of first jobs and first experiences like that. How about that, David?
First job I ever had was worked at Gulf Station for a well-known player, Rooker Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
Old Man Lewis,
Yep.
right down on Main Street. And then I went from there to Pizza Casa,
Wow.
one of the best pizzas you'll ever eat. And went from there to Country.
Yeah. Marty has a funny story about when we were getting ready for homecoming one year. We had a one-day job at Euland's Egg Farm, catching chickens and putting them in the bins.
Yes, you had to have that extra $20. I think we unloaded 450 chickens, and the ones that get loose, we'd have to corral them up. That was quite a spectacle. So then, not only did we have feathers all over us, but then we sort of had this irritable smell that was very near us. But you know, we ended up cleaning up well, and you know, lived to tell about our egg stories.
You know, Coach, real quick, how many jobs were available outside of farming work in Plano back in those days? I mean, you're talking about Donnelly's Flowers and Country Burger and the local gas station across from the Jack in the Box, but, you know, you've got these teenagers that are moving up and coming here. I mean, how many actual jobs outside of farm work were there?
Well, and the other thing is they had to work around the player schedule, otherwise they'd have to visit with Coach Clark. So the one guy was Jerry Fowler's dad, Melvin. There was so much growth going on that he had a truck that went by a different name that we can't say. But he'd
Yeah, we
hire all
can't.
the athletes, and we'd work, and then he'd let us go to play our games. And Brooks Wallace and I worked, and we'd clean up all the Fox and Jacob houses that were being built, get the properties ready for moving. That was one of the jobs.
Well, McDonald's was a big employer. We had friends that worked at
Yeah.
McDonald's. I'm sure everyone did. So
Right.
they hired a lot of high school kids. I worked
That was-
at Emmy Moses.
I
Yeah,
worked
I
at
remember
Skaggs
those.
out
Remember
at
Moses?
Safeway.
Yeah.
I used to buy my turtles there at Emmy Moses.
Yeah.
I did.
Johnny has a great story about McDonald's. Didn't you used to live on that property?
The one on 15th Street, yes, years ago, back in the early 60s, we had a rental house there on that property. And then we had another house over on 11th Street. And a quick funny story, there was a Toted Drive-In, which was a 7-Eleven back in those days.
Yep.
But we're playing in the backyard, and there was a chain link fence between the parking lot of Toted and our backyard. So our babysitter was in the house, and all of a sudden one day, this black man comes jumping over the fence and comes running. Well, the babysitter looks out. She thinks this guy's coming to kidnap us. So we're talking to him. He's like, "What's going on here?" We said, "Well, this is Duty Thomas."
Thomas.
Yes.
Duty.
Yes. And
Remember Duty.
he and my dad were really good friends back then. But like I say, our babysitter didn't know what to think. She thought the worst, but we were fine. No.
With jobs and everything. And the other thing, growing up, I've learned real quick when I moved in here in the 9th grade about the importance of wanting to be a Wildcat. Let some of these guys talk about what it was like to want to be a Wildcat from the girls' perspective, this and that, cheerleading and drill team and being involved in sports, and also guys, man. Everybody wanted to be a Wildcat.
Yeah, there was a pride there that was just,
Yeah.
I mean, I know they exist in other parts of the state now, but I would argue that we had the greatest pride for our city, our town, our teams. I mean, gosh, we were fortunate because it kept all of us together. It's not like we were all scattered out all over the place.
And the unique thing was, if you weren't playing, you were in the bleachers watching your friends play. Kids
Yeah.
don't go watch their friends play anymore now.
Really?
They got part-time jobs, and with 3 schools and everything now, it's kind of sparse. Sometimes, like we used to sell out the stadiums, and they don't sell them out anymore. Once it went to Plano East opening, and there was that rivalry east-west, and Custer was the dividing line.
Right.
You used to drive down Custer Road. You remember, John, when you were playing, half the side was black and gold, and the other side was maroon and white driving down Custer. Well, that's not like that anymore. When we were living on the east side, I think our west side was west of Avenue K. And then we started meeting the girls in Canyon Creek and West Plano and stuff, and we used to find our way out there. But
It was hard to go to Mama's Pizza
yeah,
because Mama's Pizza was in Wildcat territory.
right,
We didn't have a Mama's Pizza on Plano East side.
right.
Yeah, that was hard. I mean, because I'm in my black and gold football jersey walking in, and there's all these guys from Plano, you know. So
Exactly.
yeah, that was kind of fun.
Well, I
Yeah,
just
the
think,
jobs there weren't as many jobs on the west side of town, that's for sure.
yeah, I mean, I started out at Safeway when it first opened, the one there right there at Jupiter and
Pete Brinson?
Yeah. Well, no, that was the one on Avenue
15th.
K in 18th Street. The one I was
Yeah.
talking about is at Jupiter and in Park Boulevard. And then I went from there to
Right
Donnelly's
by
Flowers and worked with all these guys, and it was great because we were athletes, and so Miss Donnelly was, I guess maybe she was partial to athletes. I don't know, but she let us, if we needed to get out, whatever. She was pretty accommodating with that.
She paid very well, and then we'd start
Yeah.
work after the games. Like we'd get home from a game at 10 o'clock and go to work at 11, work till 2 in the morning setting up weddings, and then go home, and the next day go clean up after the weddings. Me and David Terry and Gary Maddox and Keith all worked there.
She was strict too, man. Let me tell you, Miss Donnelly, she didn't take. If you were late, she let you know about it. I mean, those are the kind of people, though, that kind of, I think, gave us
Formed you,
the sense
right?
of responsibilities. Even though we had our fun, our coaches, our teachers, the deacons of the church, the pastors, whatever, they kept us kids in line. Now, did we do all? I don't think, Johnny, we did very good with all that.
We tried.
We tried.
We tried.
Yeah.
We had a unique situation when we were growing up. It seemed like every person it was like you were required to be in a group or a club. I mean, we were on newspaper staff, yearbook staff,
Yep.
student senate. You had to be in stuff. And the more stuff you were in, the less trouble you would be in, right? The less trouble you get in.
That's true.
But, girls were in the drill team, cheerleading. The guys were in the sporting events. But we also had class officers. We just had John Munns get elected mayor of Plano, and he's class of 78 with Marty. But let's talk about some of the clubs and stuff we were in and stuff you did at school.
Cheerleading, student senate and student council,
Mhm.
which was all fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was all fun. When we were growing up, the teachers were more lenient, or it was just fun, and the teachers, I felt like, were on our side. When my kids were going there, they were getting in trouble
Adversaries.
for stuff that when we were there, we didn't get in trouble for.
It was common knowledge.
One of the things senior high had, which was odd, is they had a smokers lounge. You could walk
Yes.
out- they had a
Yes.
lounge where you could walk
Outside.
between the
Circle
buildings
out
where
there.
all the kids that wanted to smoke could go have a cigarette.
There was a designated smoking
Yeah.
area.
Well,
When my
RJ
kids were there, they got tickets for $150 and had to go to smoking school. Smoking school.
You know, what's interesting is remember R.J. Winters, our choir director. I walked in one day. Of course, all of us smoked back then, you know, and nobody knew it. My parents didn't know. But anyway, I walk in there one day and he's smoking a cigarette in his office. And I said, Mr. Winters, is it okay for you smoking? He goes, in my own office? Yes. So I'm standing there with Mark Hinkle and we all pulled out a cigarette and smoked right there in the building with him.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, when Brian McCall, talking about student senate and student council, and Brian McCall, you know, becomes a state rep.
Yeah.
Years.
Years and years, and
Yeah.
John and
20
Kathy
years
knows
on the
Brian
floor.
real well.
Yeah. Just,
He's our class president.
Yeah.
We just wanted to get him to our reunion
Well,
this
you
year.
need the chancellor at Texas State
Yeah.
now?
yeah,
Sure
he's
is,
the
yeah.
chancellor at Texas. Yeah.
Do you know what's so interesting is you know when you know all the generations before us, they always say, well, I walked 40 miles to school every day, had to milk the cows, had to, you know, but for us, you know, we didn't have the distractions that the kids do today. I mean, it's just it's a fact. We didn't walk around with one of these in our pocket and sit down at
Thank
the
God we didn't have cell phones and we were talking.
you know, I mean,
It
we
wasn't
didn't-
all
We
documented.
might not be here today.
you know, we didn't, you know, we had so much free time because, you know, you go to a restaurant now and all the kids are sitting there on their phones.
Right.
We didn't do that. You
No,
know,
they had phones. They had those real long cords. That
Yeah.
And they went all the way from the kitchen to the room, and my mom would be pulling on the cord underneath the.
Yeah, and how many times did you call the operator and say, I need to make an emergency
Yes.
call to,
Yeah.
and give a number,
Collect
and
call.
the operator would break in on their call and say, you have an emergency call. And
Or even
then
back in those
it'd
days,
just be you calling your friend.
Some people still had party lines. You pick it up and somebody's
Yes.
carrying
We
on a
had a party
conversation
line.
on the other end. You just listen in to what
We
they
had a
what they
party
have
line.
having to say. I mean, but
My
all
dad's
the
favorite thing
farmers.
to do was to come in my room and yank that line right out
out
of
of
the
the
wall.
wall.
Going back to the telephones, when we were here, there was a lady, she was the farmer's wife down the road from us, but Plano Parkway was a dirt road back then. And Miss Offutt was the telephone operator there at the building at Avenue K
Avenue
and
15th. Building's still
where
there.
the first light went up.
Yes.
And everybody went to watch the light. But she was the she was the telephone operator where she had the little headsets and she'd plug it in.
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, and that's
was what
how
we had.
primitive it was in Plano when we got here.
Like a four-digit phone number
Four-digit,
to it or
yeah,
whatever. Too.
yeah.
Well,
It was
the first-
3958. At
the-
first, it was just where you just click it.
Yeah.
We didn't even have a dial on the phone.
really.
You just click, and Miss Offutt would come on and, how can I help you? You know, and
Well,
she'd plug
we
it
were,
in.
I think we were lucky enough, especially you guys too, know that growing up in the '60s and early '70s, you know, all we really had to do was play sports. But luckily, we all loved to play sports, and pretty much every kid in town knew every kid in town
Yep.
because again, we all played sports. But we had Little League at first, and it was Plano Sports Authority came and took over.
Yep.
And
And
Willards.
it took off. I mean, it was.
Bob Willard was a huge sponsor of that. I think
Yep.
Steve Pettigo's dad helped start PSA.
Yeah, but he was a referee in
Tom-
the.
and
He was a
Lassiter.
referee in all of our.
Last
Tommy Lassiter
Tom
was one of
Lassiter,
the
Mr.
originals.
Lassiter.
Yeah.
But you know, when we first moved to Plano, there was no, you know, you stayed in the same area code, but everybody's prefix was 424. And then they moved us to 423. But it was long distance to call Allen.
Yes.
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 Well, before it was 424 and 423 is 995. That was the first prefix.
How about that?
wow.
Yeah.
That
And
is
then the
crazy.
poor people, our senior year, they added another one and it was 867. Remember the song was out 867
Yeah,
5309.
yes,
Poor
that's
I
all.
think I had
West
a
Plano.
667 number.
Man, they got
5309.
heckled.
They got
Two, three,
heckled big
four.
time.
Yeah, my
We take a minute to talk about principals and teachers and stuff. My favorite teacher I had at senior high was a guy named Art Spencer, and he ended up being a colleague of mine. He taught us government at the senior high, but he ended up being our golf coach at Plano East, and I ended up being in the same office with him. And I used to go to the First Baptist Church just at Christmas time because I was at St. Mark's Catholic Church. But I go at Christmas time to go see Mr. Spencer. Mr. Spencer was one of the wise men, and he'd sing, and he had the most magnificent voice. And I said, Mr. Spencer, are you the wisest of the wise men? He goes, between me and you, Tom, he called me Tommy. Between me and you, Tommy, I am the wisest of the wise men. But I had him, and then we have stories about Chief. Johnny has a great story about Chief. Our principal, Barney Newton. Most of our most of our principals were ex-coaches, and you couldn't get away with anything. But Chief was one of my favorite. We had Coach Maxey, we had Coach Kimbrough, Coach Clark. Can't go away without mentioning Coach
Coach
Clark.
Hart.
Magnificent.
Coach Hart.
Coach Hart.
Coach Hart was
Coach
great.
Gilbert.
Yep.
Coach
Gilbert.
Gilbert. Yeah, we
Yep.
lost Coach Gilbert.
Yeah.
We were talking about Coach Conley. We were talking about a bunch of the
Conley,
coaches.
Bardell.
Coach Woods.
You know, so many of those coaches, you know, and the teachers, the thing that I think was so unique about when you went to school, I mean, literally, we respected our teachers and highly respected our coaches. We didn't cross them, man. You just didn't. I mean, I don't know what kids are getting away with now, but you didn't get away with stuff like that back then. I mean, if you, bam, you know.
You knew what was
corporal
coming if
punishment.
you tried to get across. But
It's kind of a run. Marty and I both coached together, and we talked about coaching a lot of times. And now these kids don't really need a coach. They've got their own personal trainer. They don't need a coach to give them advice. And they'll cite the fact that, hey, my other coach taught me this way.
so I talked to Coach Kimbrough a while back, and I said, Coach, you know, I'll still use things from back then today. I still look at things and say, if I could do that, I can do this. Or I'll even think, what would they say about this? I mean, that's just
Yep.
that was the kind of coaches we had. I
Very
mean,
true.
And they could all swing a paddle too, though. So we had
Yeah.
to make sure we were.
Well, the other thing too, I mean, like for example, when we had to be down at football practice, I mean, we literally, you're running from the building to the field house. If you weren't suited up on the field, you ran whistle drill or stands or got busted. If you were 1 second late.
What was the English teacher's name we were talking about a while ago? Miss Hardison.
Campbell.
Miss Hardison, Lillian Hardison.
Hardison, yeah.
We ran her down one day. She was like 80 years old, and she was like in the Animal House when the guy got ran over. You know, we ran right over her, and we got yeah.
Well, you remember that day that
trouble for that.
we were all in biology class, you, me, Pedigo, whatever, and we would always sit there right by the door, you know, and we all had our stuff. Well, one day, and I know you were in on this, but anyway, we go running around the corner in full speed, and standing right there by the door is Barney Newton, Sherman Milner, Chief. They're stop. And some of the guys got away. They kind of walked around, you know, like we're not running with them. And so they bring us into a room, and they give us this lecture, make us all sign our name. Who was it? It was probably 8 of us, I think. And so we're just sweating bullets. We're thinking we're going to get killed when we get to practice. And so, yeah, it was, luckily it wasn't too brutal, but they put a stop to us running down the hall.
See, back in when we first went to the senior high, the practice field wasn't in yet, so we had to go back to Williams for football practice. We called it the Wildcat 500, and we'd have about 20 minutes to get from Plano senior high back across town. Well, we had Coach Shields was our PE coach, if that's what you want to call it. And he was always great because the first day of class every year, he'd pick out the football players and he'd say, all you long hairs, I don't have time for this. I'm not going to be around, but these guys will be. They're going to be my eyes and ears. So if you come up with a busted lip or a cracked head, hey, you fell off the bench right there as far as I can see. He was just that way. But we all took off early for field house that day. We get over there, and who's waiting for us? Coach Shields. I'll never forget this. It's Shanks. I give you an inch, you take a mile. And he lined up about 8 of us, and I was like number 8 in line. And he still had gas in the tank when it came time about number 8 in line.
We had great coaches that weren't just in football. The thing about Plano was they didn't just attract the best teachers; they attracted the best coaches. In baseball, we had Coach Maxey, and he's been on before with the show with the Brooks Wallace Award. He was our coach when we played for the state championship in '75. And then we had Reggie Davis was our basketball coach, and he got brought in by Coach Clark, and Coach had him at the end of our season, our sophomore year. Coach Clark shows up to the gym, and we had a whole lineup full of good basketball players. They were big guys that looked like tight ends and defensive ends. And Coach says, well, we're doing one off season this year. Let the air out of the basketballs. And Reggie Davis was a little guy, but he was also national Golden Gloves champion. And he stood up to Coach Clark and said, we'll be letting no air out of the basketballs. We're having off season. We had our own off season. The next year came Coach Bridges. Coach Davis moved on because Plano was a football town. We knew it. But coaches like Rita Barnes on the girls' side, I mean,
Yep.
she's in the Coaches Hall of Fame. These are coaches that are recognized not only in the school district, but across the state as some of the greatest coaches ever.
They were unique, man, every
Great
single
team.
one of them.
Betty Mission was one of my favorite teachers.
Well, the pressure I always had on me was family pressure because my mom was a Plano Wildcat, She played basketball. She was in the band, and the basketball team, I guess back in those days, they played 3 on one end of the court and 3 on the other.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
she played on the defensive end. I said that had to just suck. I mean,
Well, I think
all
our
you're
senior,
doing is
our
guard.
senior year of '77 was the last year the girls played 3-on-3, and our girls went all the way to the regional finals and got beat. But we had some Jean Zirkelbach.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have a Hall of Fame if she's not in the Hall of Fame. Melinda Smith, Kathy Patterson, those girls were unbelievable
They were.
basketball players.
Ann Arledge,
Yeah, Ann Arledge. We used to go follow them because we didn't make the playoffs with the boys. We went from big team to a bunch of little guys, and we followed them, and they were good. We had one of the girls from our classes in the Plano Hall of Fame. Like I said, you shouldn't have a Hall of Fame if Missy McGeorge isn't in it.
Yeah.
She was the
Golf.
one girl on the golf team, and they won the state championship. She goes to SMU and wins the national championship. She spends 19 years on the LPGA before she won her first tournament.
God, she was great.
19 years before you win your first tournament. You're coming in a lot of seconds and thirds, but that is a nice living.
You know, it's interesting. Stubbs and I laugh about this every once in a while. Stubbs Davis, Mary's brother, is literally our senior year. I used to bring my guns out to y'all's and shoot guns, and I tell people that, like, wait a minute, you talking about in the city? It wasn't in the city back then.
Not that.
No, I mean, we're out there shotguns and 22s and whatever. You know, it was in the country.
Yeah.
That's car dealerships. And the first light we ever saw from the farm was when they built the Plano Hospital. That was the first light we ever saw from
Oh,
the
wow.
farm. It was pitch dark out there when it was dark.
But that was a unique place where y'all grew up. That house is just, you know, it's great that y'all still have it. You know, y'all had it moved out to your ranch. Yeah.
Yeah. Part of it.
Now, the best thing about this group of guys and girls is that when we went to school in Plano, Plano was small, right? But we never got in trouble. We never did anything to get in trouble. We had hangouts up at the parking lot of Pizza Inn and Jack in the Box.
Yeah,
lake
you
parties.
know, hold on.
Yeah.
I stayed off camera on purpose. I kept my mic turned down on purpose. And now it's starting to come out. We didn't get in you didn't get caught.
Didn't get caught. That's
We didn't get caught.
They didn't have these things walking around taking video of y'all
That's it.
doing what you were doing.
that was,
You know.
Everybody don't think.
that was a
Thank God.
We'd get pulled over by the police, and they would look at me and say, "Number one, does your dad know where you're at?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, he okayed all this, you know." And
Well, and
he'd be
that's-
the one to find out. All my friends would get off scot free, but I'd pay the price.
See, and that's where I was going with this. It was everybody knew everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if you look like you were at a sort, they drive up on you. Does your mama know that you where you say you are?
Or they take you home. They wouldn't take you.
That's
there.
right.
They'd take you
That's
home.
right.
Yeah.
Johnny has a great story that when Plano's an alley town, and when they weren't even building the houses, the alleys were built first, and those knuckleheads used to play motorcycle tag up and down the alleys.
All right. So what is motorcycle tag? This doesn't sound smart.
We had to rear-ended or hit the brakes and get rear-ended. I mean, you had to tag the guy, and then you're right. Whatever it took.
On purpose.
Like I say, Plano was very small back then. We had to make all our own fun up, and that
You
was
know,
one phase.
Like I said, we didn't have internet and we didn't have cable TV.
We had the
no
cameo.
They
television.
played outside.
We had the cameo,
Cameo,
and
yes.
the drive-in, but that's about
We had the
it.
drive-in theater.
Skating
on
rink, one cinema, and one drive-in. An interesting story. Me and Mr. Quigley, sometime around, I guess, our junior or senior year, whatever possessed us to do this, we go around to the
I don't
back.
remember it. I don't remember.
Yeah. So anyway, we go around to the back. You know, these screens are 40, 50 feet tall. We climb to the top of that thing, to the very back of it, and we're standing on top of the, you know, and we're banging on the, waving at everybody. And this lady walks up. She goes, "I just want you to know, if we just call the police, Tom, blah, blah, blah," and I just,
We ran
we're all the way.
all the way to Bering.
We didn't stop, man. We were flying.
How smart we were. We all got in Jerry Fowler's trunk one night. There was like 5 of us squashed up in the trunk, and there was 2 people still in the car, and it just happened to be a tank of gasoline in the back. And so it's like, then we get in there, we figure out it's dollar carload night, so we didn't have to be in the freaking trunk.
I'm just glad one of you didn't try to light a cigarette.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
So, you know, Coach, I've always been interested in those what you'll become or who will become the ... after they graduate.
Most
you know,
likely to.
yeah, most likely to become the
Right.
president, most likely to become a beauty queen, most likely become a star football player. So, in your guys' time, who were those folks and what were those awards? You know, like Coach, imagine with you was most likely who will break the most rocks and no, maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, it's Johnny.
Well, you know, you say that, but when we were talking there earlier, everybody had different ideas. Like I looked at the Salina deal and what everybody's going to become, and most people don't become what they. I didn't plan on becoming a teacher coach. I was going to be a sports writer, newspaper writer, things like that. I was really into that. We did yearbook staff and newspaper staff. Terry was my boss, always telling me what to do with the yearbook staff, and we had a great time. She's still the boss.
She gives good lectures.
But it's ironic that you say that, but everybody had ideas, and Terry has a great story to share about Wildcat tales about at the end of the senior year what they would do, will people stuff.
Oh, yeah, we used to have an edition where you would will somebody something
Senior
as a
wills.
senior.
Wills and prophecies.
And now it would be considered bullying.
Yep.
Yeah,
Because
true.
it would be, and this is obviously, just for example, Terry Farmer, will Julie a sense of humor because she obviously doesn't have one. I mean, it was that kind of things, or worse. And it was pretty bad. And I'm sure they don't do that anymore.
For some reason, I was willed most likely to be a heavyweight champion. I don't know why they say that about me or even think of that. I mean, oh gosh.
But you know what, David? One of the memories that I have so vivid to me was Plano playing in the state championship in Memorial Stadium in Austin. And you know,
We
winning that
listened
state
to it on the radio.
yeah.
Gregory Portland, right?
Yeah.
They
That
had
was just
played-
amazing. You know, we won that game. Was it 21-20 was the score of that game? And just watching that happen, and the whole town was just lit up. And I guarantee you, the whole town was there. You know,
Definitely in 65, 67, they were there.
Yeah.
Marty will tell the story because I know David's won't tell the story about David's punt at the end of the game there.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah, 1971 state championship. Plano's stalled on a drive, and they're on about their 20-yard line, maybe 15-yard line. They're having a punt. So David gets the call, and David was a punter on that team as a sophomore. And so anyhow, he went out there, and he'd been just kicking the lights out of the ball during the pregame. Anyhow, his first punt, he got back to kick it, and he kicked it, and it went freaking high up in the air. But the only thing was it didn't go straight down the field. It went straight off to the left, and it ended up probably about 15 rows up in the stands.
That's not quite the story I thought you were going to tell.
So he shanked it then, right? He shanked it.
Yeah. You could have just said that.
He definitely shanked it, and so anyhow, I have to give him kudos. But you know, he had enough mental character and had enough coaches helping him out over there on the sideline on how to kick the ball. But he came back, and again, same situation. Plano's pinned on about their 15-yard line.
And the score
And
is?
and the scores, I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe 18-18 or something. And anyhow, he ended up getting a great kick. It ended up, I think it totaled 85 yards. It pinned them down on the 10-yard line. They had Marty
Akins.
Marty Akins was the quarterback. So, you know, it's one of those kind of situations. You can go from zero to hero, you know, in a very short period of time. And that was one of the good things about athletics, in that it taught us that you can get knocked down but get back up. You know, the fight's not over until you stop getting up. So there's a lot of us in here, probably some classic examples of that. But, you know, you it's the mental character of Plano at that time. You know, the 70s.
Same thing. It was the
70s
whole.
will develop.
It was the whole town. I mean,
Yes.
even
Yeah.
65 and 67,
Yes.
the whole town shut down. The way we went. I mean,
Yeah. You just
that's all we had. I mean, that's really all we really had. But it was great to have it.
Coaches
you
just
know?
would not let us quit. I mean, you just didn't quit.
Yeah,
Never.
not quitting is what Marty experienced when the Plano Highland Park game, when Marty was beat like 3 times and Plano was losing 27-0. And Marty gave up like 4 touchdowns to guys.
7.
No, I'm sorry, Marty didn't give them up. But,
12.
The comeback was unbelievable, huh, Marty?
Yeah, that was Highland Park. What a game! You know, they had huge speakers, and you know, I mean, it was really a rivalry, or we thought it was going to be. And then we woke up, and it was the start of the third quarter, and they just went right down, scored another touchdown. It's
28 to
28 to nothing. And, you know, I guess, you know, that was Cardiac Cats. And so it was fun to come back from a 28 to nothing. I'll never forget Highland Park had this deal. Here, kitty, 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 here, kitty, kitty.
Whop.
Did you see the one sign they kept holding up? Our maid went to Plano, you know. And it was,
Yeah.
Who needs film?
Who mows your
needs-
yard?
yeah.
You know,
You do, remember that? You do, you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. So anyhow, that was quite a game, and it was, and I'll admit to you, it was sweet revenge when we did end up beating them 29 to 28.
Well, it was David and Goliath when you think about it. It was the rich kids versus little, you know, blue collar Plano, you know, and they called us plain old.
Yeah. 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 We were definitely the.
But we had
offense in that
T-shirts.
one.
Didn't we have T-shirts that said "Where in the what was it? Where in the heck is Plano?" Where they had those. They sold at Gibson's.
Oh wow.
Remember the parades they used to have, the 4th of July parades downtown
Christmas.
Plano?
The Christmas
The
parades.
Christmas parades, and they had 4th of July. Yeah, Christmas
The
parade.
fire truck was always the last thing with
Yep.
Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And so my uncle was fire chief, so we got to ride on the truck with Santa Claus. We're supposed to be tossing the candy out. Well, you know me, I'm sorry, but
Johnny's putting
aiming it. I had Santa Claus kick me off the fire truck one year. It was really sad.
Stubbs and I rode
Santa
our
kicked you
donkey.
off?
You're kidding.
And the Stubbs and I rode, Mary and Joseph on the donkey or whatever it was. And right where you get to the Cliff Robinson building now, right across from the park, Cuffy went down there and he just decided to stop. And so he stopped and he didn't move, and the whole parade had to go around us because Cuffy wasn't moving. You're not moving a donkey if you don't want to move. And I just remember being so embarrassed.
Yeah, you heard it right. Her brother's name's Stubbs, and we've gone through this scrap of paper. Tell them about what we found in there.
Well, Julie brought all these.
Wildcat tales.
Yeah, well, I guess, and the Plano Star Courier articles. And then there's a picture of Stubbs when he was caddying for Gerald Ford. He was
Wow.
Vice President Ford at the time before he was president.
Byron Nelson.
Yeah, Byron Nelson.
Y'all remember in '72, Plano celebrated its centennial. They had a big production at the
100
stadium, and yeah, that was the summer of '72.
76 was it?
No,
76.
no. You're thinking of the bicentennial. You're thinking about this was when Plano celebrated 100 years. Was in 1972, and they had a big production. And it was a big deal. They used this high school stadium, you know, and then the stage was on the field out there by the track, and that was a neat experience. That's kind of pride. How many towns do you know that celebrate with a big production being around for 100 years?
They had a rocking chair contest.
Oh, Freddie Harrington.
And Freddie
remember
Harrington, Freddie Harrington was he and my uncle and two other people. They're doing it like all night long, and it was down to 3 or 4 of them. And Freddie Harrington's girlfriend was standing next to me, and some guy walks up and starts hugging on her. Well, Freddie jumps out of the rocker, boost. He's disqualified right there. I mean,
Freddie just needed to hit somebody.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. It's amazing what fatigue will do to a man's temper.
Yeah.
Now we grew up at the end of our class, probably 76, 77 became the disco era. Girls were all wearing bell bottoms and guys had the shoes. I want to keep bringing the shoes. We dressed Keith up for our reunion.
for the reunion,
His
yes.
shoes, and we dressed him up like John Travolta and all that kind of stuff. He came out and was the MC for our class reunion. But back then, drinking age was 18 in Plano, and we would go to club. Or we'd go down to H.P. Cassidy's in the study hall, and H.P. Cassidy's. That was a lot of fun. And we'd go down and hang out, and we were in there. We were in Adair's one time. And we were seniors in high school, granted, but we're 18 years old, and a pitcher of beer is $2.
Yeah.
We're sitting down there, and we look over there, and Johnny goes, "Oh hell." In come Coach Hardison, and we go, "Oh, we need to get out of here." And Johnny goes, "Why we got to get out of here? They're not supposed to be here either." Could you imagine if we let Coach Clark know that they were walking into Adair's?
Well, the other thing
So-
too was
Cedar Springs.
So that's a good question, right? So did coaches and teachers, did they drink in front of you all back in the day?
No,
they stayed away from
They
that.
still don't.
Well,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
if you were fortunate enough to be in their company in a place you probably weren't supposed to be.
But you know, the thing is, when I mean, literally, the drink, you could drive around. It wasn't illegal to drive around with an open can of beer.
Right.
And a
the
shotgun on the
police-
rack in the back.
the
Well, you
police-
used to have to drive 25 miles
And no
just to get a beer.
signals.
No.
Go back to Plano to drive.
We got pulled over one night, you know, and police officer walked up and he sees the beer sitting there. It's me and Cliff Massey and a couple other guys. He said, "Y'all had too much to drink." No, okay. Well, y'all be careful going home. I'm serious. We were all 18, so it wasn't, you know, it didn't matter.
So back in the day, when did the concrete stop in Plano?
It
At what-
hasn't.
At what street? Well, no, it
Alma.
did. It did when I
Alma
was a
West
kid
Plano.
too.
Alma was
Yeah.
pretty
Alma,
much,
Alma was first
and then
subdivision
the
west of
neighborhood
70.
right back there. Yeah, they built, and
And
they
they
had
had the Texas pool.
Yeah.
And all that.
Oh, yeah.
that was far
Yeah,
West
Marty grew up
Plano.
going to
My uncle
Texas
used to
Pool.
live there, and that
Man,
was like West
That was the
Plano.
neighborhood he grew up in.
Gotcha.
And then you think, you know, David was fortunate enough in the early 70s. I mean, my gosh, you know, everybody didn't have a pool in the 70s. So you had these community pools, and, you know, to be fortunate enough, I think he was a lifeguard over there. So as a lifeguard, I'd always get to sneak in and do different things.
You know, they built the Plano pool at Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first day, the first,
Aquarium.
the first.
Natatorium.
Back then, it was opened up with no. It was
The
just-
aquarium.
it was our
I
new
love
pool.
that. That's what they should have called it. Was the aquarium.
Day one was a free swim,
Yeah.
and it was my cousin was getting married that night, and I didn't make it to the wedding. I was still at the pool. Man, my mother wore me out for that. But,
Well, that was the only place that had diving platforms.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Or no, back on the old days, so you go down Greenville Avenue. What was that place called? They had the biggest pool around with a high
Well,
dive.
they knew the restaurant and bar in downtown Plano.
what was that
Called-
place?
You know what I'm talking about? My mother used to.
Greenville.
Yeah, Vickery Park. It was Vickery
Vickery
Park.
Park.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
they had rides down there. It was at the boardwalk. It was really cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
That was Stables too, wasn't it?
maybe in the
Yeah,
back.
they did. They had stables.
Then
Yeah.
they had that little
Greenville
red building
where?
called the
Where-
Holland.
Greenville and basically Forest, I want to say. It took up. It was huge. It was a whole street block.
And then there was a
It's
there
down
was
there
this
with the filling
Sandy Lake
station
Park
at
too.
Big-
Remember
Yeah.
in Carrollton?
You know, Greenville
Yeah.
and Walnut Hill.
There used to be a
or-
beer joint down there called the Creek. It was an old house. It was an old house. My granddad
Yeah.
was there all the time, and he'd take me with him for some reason. And here he is, giving me the Falstaff. Here, boy, have a drink. And I'm like, ooh.
So, Johnny, if I'm getting this right,
Yes.
we lacked the internet. We didn't have video games. There wasn't much infrastructure, but there were a lot of beer joints that we went to.
But they're all out of town.
They're
though.
all
out of town.
Dallas,
Yeah.
basically,
All in
is all we
Dallas.
had to go
Look at the
to.
map of
We had to
Dallas.
drive to Dallas.
There was
Plano
literally
was
just
dry.
a
Yeah, and then Lake Dallas, they opened up a
illegal,
couple
you
of
know?
beer stores out there toward the end.
But it
That
just
was
sounds
all
like
we
the
had.
recreation surrounded around beer and pools. Now, I don't know if that sounds
It was
like
a
a
different
good
time. It was a
combination.
different time. I mean,
And the lake.
The other thing would be cars. Cars were a big thing. Everybody, like
Yeah.
Marty had a 1977 Thunderbird.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
But I had a 1971 Vega.
Oh.
orange.
Oh,
It
I
was
had a
orange
Vega,
too.
I had a
And my
72
Vega, I would
Fairlane.
not need a key to start.
You had the button.
Marty asked me one time, he says, "Hey, Quig, you mind tonight if I take the Vega and you take my Thunderbird?" I'm here like, yeah.
I like that, you know, have to put the screwdriver in there to jump it.
Pettigo had
Yeah,
that
nowadays you
Chevelle.
just push a
Oh,
button
yeah.
or just sit in your car and go, I'm here, and it starts up.
Back in jacked up. with big
Pettigo
old tires.
Chevelle, yeah, we'd
Yeah.
go down Central Expressway about 70 miles an hour. He'd throw it neutral somehow, and he would throw it back in the drive and get a scratch doing 70 miles an hour.
Now,
Especially last of all.
Boom!
Now, Chuck-
Came right through the floor.
now Chuck had pointed out, Chuck Gura, who's a part of our team, he's our chief technology officer, that Doc Severinsen was from Plano.
Yeah.
And that he had played with the Plano band. So, did you all get to experience Doc Severson back when you were in high school, or was that like
Never saw him when he
1980?
came here.
That wasn't our kind of style of music. That was what it
Boss
was.
Skaggs was our.
Boss Skaggs. Boss Skaggs.
Okay.
was from Plano.
Yeah.
And everybody
My uncle used to share a paper route with Boss Skaggs back in the
Really?
day. Oh,
Steve
yeah.
Miller Band was big.
I still like it.
Buzz and Jimmy.
But you know, one of the funny things,
1980,
one of the coolest places for us when we all became legal enough to drink. I mean, it was really, if we weren't at the lake, we were all at a place called the Study Hall, and it was right there at Greenville and Crewthaven. So it was the closest bar from Plano, you know. So I mean, it was like our own little. I mean,
We knew everybody there.
Half of the people there were from Plano.
And I had they caught me with a fake ID this week. So I came back next week on my 18th birthday, and we had a birthday party in there, so I really didn't miss out on much.
When I went in on my 18th birthday, they weren't going to let me in because I been going with a fake ID. So then they thought.
What
it
was there was a woman
really was a fake
there was a
ID.
woman that ran that place.
Yes.
She could be really nice
Berry.
one minute and scream
yes,
at you
what's
the
her
next.
name?
Jenny Bear.
Yeah.
Jenny Bear. Yeah,
Jenny
yeah.
Bear was the name of her place, but her name was.
She was yeah, she could be your best friend or she could be I mean we throw people over down the stairs on the pool table. I mean, we were brawling quite a bit back in those days.
Well, we had other places we went to. There, like on there was Whiskey River, and I remember one night we're in there, and in walks Willie Nelson with Waylon Jennings, and they just grab a guitar and start playing at midnight. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It was his
That's
place
neat.
on Greenville
Yeah,
Avenue.
Whiskey.
HB Cassidy's, that was another one. But the study hall
Confetti's
was
Confetti's
Yeah.
playing backgammon and Pac-Man.
yeah.
After the gold rush.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
That's, we went there after the football banquet and it was an ice storm. but
Where
we
was
still
that?
walked-
What, wasn't
was
that
on
Bachman
Northwest
Lake?
Highway,
Yeah, right there,
Yeah,
North
yeah,
Bachman
right.
Lake.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was a
Oh,
circle
that
disco
place.
that was down there on the other side of European Crossroads.
Rodeo Dallas was in your
Yeah.
crossroads.
Big places to go for prom were, what was that, Baby Doe's. and-
Matches
Yeah.
mine, yeah.
And then Southern
Kitchen.
We went there.
Southern
one-
Kitchen, yeah.
that
The
was
Spaghetti Warehouse.
Spaghetti Warehouse.
Well, we had
What
it
was
at the
place
Royal
we
Coach
had-
Inn.
We had where we went, where
Royal
was the
Coach
old
Inn was
train
one
and
of our
everything
proms.
before, we were like, for
For our annual, that was Spaghetti Warehouse.
Spaghetti
Yeah.
Warehouse. It was so good.
Remember the corral?
Oh, yeah.
That was a bouncer at the corral and Rodeo Dallas both. Yeehaw.
You know,
We had big flashlights.
Yeah, I know.
A lot of times what we'll do is, with Kathy and John, we'll talk music. And we'd already brought up Boz Scaggs, but we grew up, I think it was our senior year, the song from the Commodores. Kathy came out, Brick House.
Oh,
And
And YMCA.
Why-
No,
I
I think our favorite song was Cat Scratch Feet,
Oh, yeah.
if I'm thinking back right.
everybody.
Oh, yeah, all
Ted
those.
Nugent.
Yeah, we love some music. Yeah, so what were y'all's favorite songs? Like, if you think back to high school, what's the band that you think of, and what's the
Let me
song?
Let me start with this, saying this.
Yeah, we got to
I'll
go
tell you
around the
something right
table
now.
on this. So
Well,
you're first.
I'll tell you something that I'll argue this. The music in the 70s was it's timeless.
It's the best there is.
We
It
grew
really
up in
is.
the best era of music. I'm telling you right now. And
Yeah.
that's 10-year time frame. It was awesome.
Okay, so name your favorite.
Yeah, so everybody go around.
gosh,
The
we're
band
doing-
that reminds you of high school, or your favorite, and
The
then what
Doobie
was your favorite
Brothers.
song?
The
Okay,
Doobie Brothers.
yep. Favorite song. And it doesn't
Oh,
have to be
God.
Doobie Brothers. Like, if you have a song that reminds you of high school, what would that be?
Oh man, another park, another Sunday.
Oh, great song, yeah.
Let's see. Old Black Water.
Yep.
Listening to the music.
Keep on.
Long Train Running.
Yep.
Queen,
His brother
We
had
Are
an
the
album
Champions.
collection, and when he was at work, we'd sneak into his brother's room
And
play
listen to his
play
albums. I love it. Yeah. And playing albums, just that,
Yeah.
playing albums. Kids nowadays have no idea the greatness of dropping that needle onto that record and just hearing that little scratch, and then it started playing. All right, next, what was
Right.
band and
always-
song?
I was always, I like rock and roll. I like guys like Jerry Jeff Walker back in the day.
Yeah.
Country.
Yep.
Redneck Mother and that kind of good stuff.
Johnny used
But
to drive from Plano to Austin to see Jerry Jeff, and then drive back.
Drive
the
back.
same
Where'd
day.
you see? Okay, we're in Austin.
the Armadillo World headquarters, he was there quite a bit, and just
Like,
there was
did
two
you ever
or
go to
three-
the Broken Spoke or anything?
Broken
Yeah,
Spoke,
okay,
yes. Me
yeah.
and a guy named Steve LaFollette. We go
Steve
in.
LaFollette.
I'd drive
That's-
down, and he would drive back.
And that was a big old. Nowadays, it's no big deal to go to Austin. Back then, that was a big
Oh,
old
yeah.
drive.
Yeah. So the speed limit was 55.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that they ever drove it.
I was gonna say, not that y'all. Yeah, I'm hearing y'all were a little bit of rule breakers.
Really?
What would yours be?
I remember liking the Commodores.
Yes.
Yes,
Commodore.
yeah, they were great.
I
What?
don't
What?
remember any songs, but
Yeah.
Brick House. Machine
Just to be
Gun.
close to you.
and
Sing
the
that song.
Allman Brothers.
Allman Brothers
Yeah,
Band.
all the brothers back. Yeah, they were big back then. Yeah. What? What would yours?
Listening to Bad Company.
Yes.
And, in the car, Beach Boys. or
Oh,
something,
yeah,
was a
okay,
big
yeah.
thing
Leonard Skinner.
On
Yeah,
the
Leonard
8-track
I
tape.
remember A Star Is Born.
Oh,
Yes.
the yeah.
Chris
The
Christopherson.
second one, the one with Barbara Streisand and
Yes.
Chris Christopherson. Oh,
And that
yeah.
was really good music.
Yeah, that was great.
On
It's
album.
still a good
Or an
soundtrack.
8-track.
Which that's something new that happened during that time, is music became more associated with films.
Oh, was that kind of the beginning of
Yeah,
that?
right,
Like
right,
where you
right,
bought?
yeah.
Oh, true. Yeah, where you bought the album after you saw. Like, well,
then you bought the 8-track because you had.
oh,
an 8-track
that's
player in
yeah,
your car.
that's
That's
true.
my first-
Well, like
my
Grease,
first
you know, the
purchase
movie
was
Grease.
8-track.
Everybody saw the movie and went and bought the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Mary?
I I remember, why am I thinking Boston and Journey?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah,
I
heck
love
yeah.
their music.
Great
Oh,
music.
yeah.
Names,
Great
I mean,
music.
still today, those come on and it just gives you a warm,
Takes you back.
fuzzy.
Yeah.
I mean, it just feels good. It
Yeah.
wasn't too hard rock. My senior year, I was dating Mark Birch, and he loved Kiss.
Yes.
You remember Kiss?
Oh, yes.
Which was polar
Their
opposite.
greatness.
I
Yeah,
liked,
right.
you know,
I was not a big
I
fan
liked
of
Mark,
theirs.
so I listened to Kiss.
I love
they're
it.
Still around, you
Yeah.
know, it's
Kiss is still touring. They're still on their final
Gene
tour
Simmons
every
is-
year.
It's amazing. So and I've gotten to meet them.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of
That's
cool.
awesome.
You know, you go, wow. Pretty.
Marty, can you remember any of the music?
Yeah, Marty, you remember anything, or you just?
You're drinking a Dr. Pepper, so hey.
Marty and I rode around into Thunderbird, listened to the release of Rolling Stones' "Some Girl."
That's right.
That was a great album.
It was. It was. All the Stones were good. Yeah. I mean, I remember as a 10-year-old, and that's when I think I really started listening to music. But I don't think I was listening to appropriate music at that time.
Yeah.
And any song then that had a cuss word in it, man, I just thought that was the best song. and then it got to where most of the song was a cuss word. It's nice to see everything evolves.
Yeah.
Chicago was another great band.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Elton John had good.
The
music.
Eagles,
Oh,
yes.
yeah, the Eagles, yeah,
If we could
and Elton
start-
John,
if we
yeah.
could start naming bands, and we'd be here
I
all
did.
day.
Well, and again, they all came from then, and so many of them are still out there
Still
touring.
there.
It's
Right.
just,
Yeah.
and you just,
Mick
you know,
Jagger's ageless.
yeah. Well, heck, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons. I mean, those guys are still putting on 9-inch platform heels and makeup, coming down zip lines. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Steely Dan. Steely Dan was
Dave,
great.
did you have one?
Yeah, Steve.
You named them all, man.
No, I didn't name them all. I have my list right here.
Or what's a song that you think of? What would have been one of your favorite
Oh,
songs
there
back
we
in the
go.
day?
Here's another one.
Peter Frampton.
I remember
Oh,
the cover
yes.
of the album.
Yeah, long hair, man. He had a mop for a hair.
The Steve
Not
Miller
anymore.
Band.
Steve Miller was great.
Ohio players. That's
Waylon Jennings and David Allen
Who
Cole.
did
David Allen
Stairway
Cole
to
played
Heaven?
Richland College.
That was our-
and it was
our
$3 a ticket, and we
homecoming
thought we
tenth
were
grade.
getting skinned.
Well, of course.
And then,
So, Coach,
whenever
here's.
she- whenever she came to town, we always went to see Linda Ronstadt.
Oh, okay,
That's what I
yeah.
love to watch.
Absolutely,
Texas
yeah.
all over at UTA.
Casey and
yeah.
the Sunshine Band.
Yeah.
They got that
Yes.
on.
Six Flags. Six Flags.
See, again, we could sit here for
You could literally
hours.
do just a show on music,
Music,
from back
yeah.
in the day. Yeah.
So we had it made. Now, the only
Yeah.
thing we didn't have made was the technology back then. Because let me tell you, the 8-track cassettes, if you had your player for more than a week, you were taking a piece of paper, folding it up, and sticking it up underneath that
hold
thing
it.
so it would play.
And with the 8 tracks, it was always funny because it would stop in the middle of a song
Yeah.
to shift
Yeah,
over
for
to
the
the next track. You're like, gotta lose your mind in Detroit. Click, 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 click. Rock City,
We thought it was
Yeah,
the coolest thing ever. I mean,
and
it
you're
was,
like, this is great.
Yeah, I don't know what any of you are talking about. So,
He shows.
I was the age of the cassette. So, no, but so how about school dances? I mean,
Yeah.
and when they played the slow song, was it still awkward back then as it is probably today? Or
I'll tell you this: when I moved from New Jersey and went to the first Bowman dance, I had to teach guys how to dance at my house because they never danced with girl. Remember David Curtis and
Yes.
the Betty broomstick, teaching them how to where to put your hands, David, on the broomstick.
That's funny.
so it wasn't 2 hands on the neck, 2 hands on the butt.
No, that was Catholic school. There was 2 hands and the nuns with yardsticks.
One thing I think that's cool now about dances is you don't have to have a date. Back when we were in school, if you didn't have a date,
didn't go.
you didn't go.
Yeah.
And so we would get together
I
everyone
thought
who
if you had
didn't
a
have a
date, you
date.
wouldn't go.
Well,
Oh,
that's
Marty.
you. That's you. And so I know, a lot of the girls, if you didn't have dates, you just all have to get together and go do something else.
Yep.
Which I think it's cool that now they can all go.
That's
whether you have a
that
date
is
or
a cool
not.
change.
What was
yeah.
Marty Stimson and Reggie Stimson's sister name? Marty.
Gwen.
Gwen.
Gwen, yeah. I used to dance with Gwen and
Angie.
and the
Angie.
Stimson
Or
girls
Andy.
at Bowman dances, and a guy named Rick James came out with a song. What was it? Super Freak.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was fun dance.
you had the moves, I'm sure, Quilly.
And the platforms.
No, I didn't have them. Keith did.
I did.
Yeah, you're talking about Kiss been on their platforms. I mean, I just can't imagine some of the people in this room in 9-inch platform shoes.
Wait a minute. I
you
did
can't.
that.
He did it already.
I did that.
Wear 'em to school.
Hey,
Not 9
and
inches, but-
Keith
They were
also
big.
has a shoulder
I wore
that
'em
he's
all day long.
dislocated.
He was putting the shoes on last night. That's
Yeah.
what happened. He wouldn't.
He was reliving that moment in those platform shoes.
But you know what's
Come
funny
clean,
is
man,
Tom
come
sends me
clean.
this box. He didn't even tell me, and I get this box. Now this was at our last class reunion, and I get this box, and I pull this thing out, and it is. I mean, we're talking polyester leisure suit, man, with gold chains, and the platforms were like this. We're talking, and I tried putting those. I had to put on 3 pairs of socks to keep from falling off my feet.
Yeah, but think about it. We had leisure suits. We had the shirt all buffed up underneath.
When you
Oh,
think
yeah.
of leisure suits, who do you think of?
Leisure suits.
Rick Hall.
Rick
Oh,
Hall.
because
Rick
well, no,
Hall.
because his grandmother make him a
His
new one
grandma
for
would make him
everything he
leisure
went
suits.
to.
He's the one guy
Yes.
that everything he went to, he had a different leisure
His
suit.
grandmother made
So
them for him.
this is for the ladies.
Leisure suits.
What was the nastiest smelling cologne a guy would put on? You'd be like, dude, tone it
Oh,
down.
God, I don't remember.
I don't know, the best one.
It was
that
from
I
that
went-
chicken. It was from the chicken
No,
ranch we Marty
Aramis
went to. That's what it
the
was.
best. Aramis
Aramis
was
was a good
really,
one.
if your guy
Yeah.
wore Aramis, that was cool.
I mean, what was it?
And what about the
I remember
girls?
my
That's
mom.
all I can think of.
I remember
That's
my
what
mom.
Brute.
Yeah, yeah,
Always
Brute.
went for
Flashing
Brute.
My mom would
Spice
buy
for
musk
sure.
one time, and it ended up in the trash right away.
What about the
No,
what
that's-
about the ladies? What did y'all? What was the perfume y'all wore in high school?
Oh,
Like what was pop?
sadly,
Did opium?
I don't know if it was
Ralph
but
Lauren.
Jungle Gardenia.
I remember.
Oh wow.
Charlie.
Charlie, yeah, that's right.
Charlie.
I have a question for the 3 of y'all.
Ralph.
Did y'all ever use Dippity Doo?
No.
No, I don't think so. Sun is.
Was that to make your
Sun is-
hair?
I don't know.
curl?
No,
That's
dippity
Sun
doo.
in, yeah.
I'd have a
I
burr
just wanted
haircut,
to
and I'd
clean
grow my
it.
hair out, and I'd have to
Bunch.
use that to
Oh,
get
yeah.
the.
Get it to
Are
lay
you
down.
serious?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But
And
y'all
good-
did have big hair back then.
We had big.
We had
hair.
Yeah, we
hair.
did.
Oh yeah.
I think it just kept getting bigger after we graduated.
It did.
And
It
then
did.
started falling out.
Thinning.
A couple of the
Thinning.
TV shows. Well, I started thinking, I was brainstorming
Brainy
yesterday
thinning.
on the way from Galveston up to Dallas while my wife was driving. I sent it all to everybody. And one of the things is TV shows, and we had Soul Train, we had Saturday Night Live during that time, Mr. Bill.
Good Saturday Night Live.
Yes, good.
That was
Saturday
when.
Night Live.
Yeah.
Happy Days.
Well, we also had at probably midnight the national anthem.
Anthem,
would
yeah.
play.
Before
Yeah.
the TV
10
went
o'clock,
off.
you know where your
would
children
go
are.
off.
Exactly.
Yes. it
10
had-
o'clock.
there
No,
was
really.
TV.
They would sing the
Yeah.
national anthem, play the national anthem,
Have
and
a
that was the end
flag.
of it. You didn't get to watch any more TV.
Yeah. Then it was like an ants in a snowstorm.
You're
you
too young to
know?
remember all this.
Oh, you'll be
think we
surprised.
always-
I'm older than JP.
I came from a house full of firemen, so we always watched Emergency or Adam 12 for some reason.
Well, those came on back to back,
Yeah.
didn't they? Yeah.
We didn't have it. Our
Starsky
TV
and
broke
Hutch.
when we were in
Yeah.
8th grade, and then we never had another one until I went off
I
to
would
college.
venture to
Oh, what's
say
that?
Stubbs wasn't going to be
Huh?
watching Soul
Say that
Train.
again?
We didn't have a TV. Our TV, our little,
Black
you
and
know,
white?
black and white with the rabbit ears and the foil up top of it.
Yeah.
It broke when we were in 8th grade, and we just didn't have another one. I mean, when I went off to college, they still didn't have one. I think Mom got one later.
My
I don't
we
remember
did-
watching TV.
my
We
grand
didn't watch
Yeah.
TV. We didn't have time between the farm work and then,
Yeah.
you know,
that
school
was-
and the cheerleading and basketball and all the other things. You didn't have time.
And most
Didn't
houses
even
only
miss
had
it.
one
No, you
TV.
probably
See, it
didn't even
was-
know you needed
And the
it.
parents got that.
my grandparents were farming out far west Plano, almost Carrollton, and they actually went out and bought a TV. And they were the only ones around with a TV, so people would come up at night and look through the windows and watch the TV. Oh yeah.
Oh, I got one for you. This is classic. I was cleaning out some of my dad's stuff, and my dad didn't throw anything away. And I find this statement. It's a finance agreement from First National Bank of Plano. He goes out and in 1972 he goes and buys a Zenith color TV. It was a 23-inch screen in a console. He paid $550 for it, and he financed it at 14% interest. So I did a Google search on what was $550 worth in today's money. $3,600 he spent on that first color TV of ours.
Oh my gosh.
We were
That's
real
crazy.
fortunate. My dad, like I said, worked at RCA, so he got the RCA discount. And we had the big console with the stereo, the radio,
Yeah.
Oh,
the
yeah.
TV.
Yeah.
But we weren't allowed to touch it unless were told to change the channel for him.
Yep.
You were the remote control.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
were
were
the remote
the
control.
remote
It was only usually on during family time watching Sunday night was Walt Disney, then the Ed Sullivan Show. Those
Yeah.
are the two that we watched as family TV, and that's what a lot of people did back then.
But it was during the when I wasn't playing, off season, not summer, whatever. We would always, when it was too hot outside, we would always come inside. We would watch the Flintstones, Leave It to Beaver, I Love Lucy. Oh gosh, and then Dick Van Dyke. By that time, your parents got
Everything
home.
on MTV channel now.
Speed race.
Yeah, but we played
Speed
out in the
racers.
heat. We played out in the heat a lot too.
We did play in the
We
heat a
did
lot.
play.
Always outside.
Yeah, we were outside
Yeah.
a lot.
You know, one of the things that kids nowadays experience is eating out all the time. Rarely, it seems like, do families have dinner around the table. So back when y'all were growing up, did y'all go out and eat with your family all the time? How was dinner
Very
I don't
time?
seldom.
remember eating out with my family, ever.
You
We'd
didn't
go to
even eat
Hayes'.
out if you were
We'd
at
go to
Melton
Hayes'
House. You wouldn't
Cafe.
miss
That
it.
was a big night out for eating here in Plano.
Yeah, we always had family dinner.
Yeah.
And Mama cooked breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and there might be just the 8 of us, or if everybody had a friend, there may be 16, but whatever. I mean, there was always plenty of food for everybody.
That's interesting
And I
that
wouldn't trade that.
I know.
It's just
Dad-
special. And if we weren't there, we had to have a really good excuse.
yeah.
And Dad would take the phone off the hook because nobody was getting up to answer a phone or anything. It was family time.
But Dad-
A lot of preaching went on.
Dad and Mom Dad was very strict about this. I mean, we would sit down every single night as a family, and we ate together. Now, I mean, and now I walk through a restaurant and I see these families sitting there, and not one of them are speaking to each other.
Right.
They're all on their
They're all
phones. Hey, thanks, Barty.
Making the point for you.
Yeah, exactly. Showing us an example.
No,
When
I was grateful for that.
Yeah.
my mother passed away. My dad was a fireman, and back in those days there were only 2 shifts, so he's on one day and
Was
off
he
the
with
next.
Chief Toller too, or was
Oh
he
yeah,
after?
no, that was my uncle. Mother was fire chief with Chief Toller back then.
Okay.
But my dad, when he was on duty, my grandmother would come over and cook for us and babysit that night, basically. So we were having chicken fried steak one night, and I'm like, "Good God, how sick!" Because my grandmother was kind of coughing and sneezing. I said, "She must really be sick." And my sister goes, "I cooked it." And I threw it in the trash. And my dad came home like 2 weeks later. He made a roast, and my dad's roast was basically gray and green. If you know, like, I'm not eating that. So he just put a knife, fork into it, threw it in the trash can, and walked away. So
No, we had family dinner. I would wait out on the steps, waiting for my dad to come walking down the street when I was a kid growing up, and it didn't change when we were in Plano. We knew if he wasn't home at 5:45, that he was stuck in traffic. But we always had dinner together. In fact, my mom was, and a lot of moms, team dinners were at my mom's house. I'd bring the basketball players over. Kent Gaddis, CM Pier would come to the house, and we'd have steak and potatoes back when steak and potatoes was considered a good idea to eat before a game. And my mom would provide it for like 5 of the players on the team, and we'd go over there for pregame. I mean, it was unbelievable.
But going out to a restaurant, I mean, literally, going to a restaurant, I mean, literally, all of us sitting, I mean, it was a once a year treat,
It was
man.
a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
We'd go to Highland Park Cafeteria sometime, once a
Yeah.
year maybe.
I really don't remember eating
was
out with
huge.
when they opened up Bonanza Steakhouse,
Oh, that was,
a big
man.
deal.
Yeah.
Bonanza in Plano.
We'd go to Kip's.
Yeah.
Kip's
Yeah.
Big Boy,
Kip's Big
yes.
Boy.
Kip's Big Boy.
What was that Mexican food restaurant at Spring Valley and Central? We
Oh,
raised the flag.
Ponchos.
Ponchos.
Okay,
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
$1.99?
I remember going
All you could eat. You raised the flag if you wanted something
It's
else.
the
Greatest story of Johnny is when we were in
I don't have any
college.
stories. I have no
They,
stories.
they had this cement bench in Highland Park, and we bet Johnny, if you can carry that cement bench all the way around the house and put it in the truck without laying it down, we'll buy you lunch at Poncho's. And he carried it the entire way for that $3.29 all you could eat at Poncho's.
Well, that was the one time too. I bet them I could eat 30 tacos.
Yeah.
And I got to 29. They called the bet off, so I got really screwed on that.
We wanted to let him win.
Yeah, that was the thing, back then, you just didn't, remember Farrell's?
Yeah.
Remember-
That was
Yes.
a big treat if
Yeah.
we got taken to Farrell's,
Barrels, yeah.
That was usually like a birthday party kind of place.
Yeah.
And I think, do y'all remember they had like little plastic monkeys on the ice cream? Like, wasn't that a choking hazard?
It would be today.
How did we survive?
Farrell's was out of California.
Farrell's.
And I actually went to one in Bakersfield, California, Farrell's ice cream. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, but mom.
we would eat, I think it was
We had
Wednesday
dudes-
nights at First Baptist Church.
Yes,
And Mama was, you know, she cooked there, and then, so that was going out to eat, was,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
We go to-
exactly.
Go to
You know,
Dude's Drive-In. Remember Dude's Drive-In?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know that
The big dude.
one of the best memories I have, I guess, about Plano was, you know, not just our school, but our church, First Baptist Plano, and we had it made, Mary. I mean, we were just, it seemed like the whole town went to church there.
Johnny went there.
The whole
Yeah.
ninth grade football team did because
Yeah.
Coach Stone made us.
Yeah, exactly. We sit in the Sunday school class, and you know, it was like, you know, we're sitting in the classroom at school. We sat in the classroom at Sunday school. Coach Stone taught us. We kept our mouths shut. You know.
Now, a great story with Coach Stone recently passed, and we spent like the last 4 or 5 years, from the time he was like 86 to the time he was 91, we would go by and see him. Well, pretty much whenever I was in town, we'd take Marty over. Keith would come over, and we'd tell stories. And Keith has a great coach. Coach Stone was our ninth grade coach, but then when Plano Senior High opened, Williams became Williams, and he went over and was the AD over there. And his son and daughter went there, and he still lives in the same house he bought. He passed away at 91, but Keith tells a story to Coach Stone one time. Tell him you were my Sunday school teacher, you were my
Yeah.
driver's ed teacher.
Yeah, he was football coach. Let's see, Sunday school teacher, driver's ed teacher, neighborhood disciplinarian. I mean, he was all of it, man. You know, and let me tell you something about Coach Stone. He was not a big man, but he put the fear of God. Johnny, I mean, both of us.
He loved
man.
to call me names. He put me on the chartreuse team, not blue, not gold, but chartreuse. Or driver's ed. I would sleep in, and he'd come around those. Remember Joe Bill Griffin's Oldsmobiles were the cars we drove.
And he had a brake on
He'd
his
be
side.
over honking the horn, waking me up. And Trakes, I'm not going to do this again. 2 days later, he was doing
Could
it
you
again.
imagine if you didn't do well for a coach being called a zero?
Yep.
Oh, that'd be the biggest lawsuit nowadays.
Are you
kidding me?
zeros?
Seriously?
It would be held in a different esteem.
Well, no, I still say that ninth grade football team, if we could kept those guys together, we'd have won a state championship.
Yeah.
We had
Lost too
guys,
many players.
we had guys 6'3",
Not many
6'4", in
of them made it to the
junior
10th
high.
grade
Yeah.
year.
Robert Horn, the Pond brothers,
Les Brown.
Les Brown. Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Kevin Peer would run right over. I mean, you didn't clear the hole out for Kevin Peer. He's running over you, and so you cleared the hole out. Yeah,
Yeah,
So-
but it's interesting. We started a tradition, I guess, probably 15 years ago, and I host a. My friends would laugh at me when I tell them we would host a junior high reunion. Now, who does that? But people that because I have to explain to them every time. We were a small town back then. Everybody knew everybody. So by the time we got to the high school, the town had grown around us. So, it was great. Bowman reunion. Actually, we had to change it to a junior high reunion because we were insulting some of the Wilson folks. I think she protested it, a few others did.
y'all
So
were
we-
invited. Y'all never wanted to
Being
come.
left out.
You all were invited. Boy, that sounds inclusive.
After it was over, we were.
Yeah. So, here we go, right? I mean, first of all, what a great, and I don't know if you know this, but it's already been over an hour.
No.
Now, we've just been sitting and
It has
visiting.
not.
It has.
Julie's talked once.
No, Julie's been real good. Now, I
It
can
has
see,
not been an hour.
I can see who's gotten picked on in high school, for goodness sakes.
But see, I was from Canyon Creek, so.
Oh.
They were
Richardson. Our church was in Richardson.
But aren't you
Canyon
glad you were
Creek-
part of Plano, though?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you like
Yes,
Plano
but-
better than Pierce then, I guess, or would that be?
Well, I didn't go there.
You'd
So I
gone-
was in Collin County.
She was in the Plano ISD Collin County part.
Yeah.
They didn't have Aldridge back then yet, right?
Yes, I
Yes, they
went
did.
all the
Yeah.
They did have
way
Aldridge.
through.
Okay. So, but no, it's Marty. It's been or Keith. It's been over an hour. We've been just sitting
can't
and
believe that.
yeah, time flies.
5 minutes to me. 5 minutes.
Well, and it's all been so. I mean, it's been so much fun, and it's been so organic. And I know that term is highly overused nowadays, but it just really just kind of came about, and we're going to use it as a stakeholder. Another overused reality.
Did we pass the test?
No, you failed, Johnny. You will not
Just
be
like the
invited
old-
back.
just like high
Good,
school.
because all your stories were,
Clean.
they won't.
Story.
They were
won't-
clean.
I don't tell dirty stories
We're
to
very
begin with. What
proud
is this?
of the family-friendly show.
Us three don't have any dirty stories.
No.
We don't.
I didn't even cuss in high school.
So
What was that?
outside of all of that, as people watch this, it'll be younger kids that watch this. It'll be hopefully teachers showing a bit of history that Plano has gone through the oral stories that you have shared about the time. And, again, I think some of the big ones are the entertainment factor, where you went out and played motorcycle bumper cars in the alleys that didn't have houses yet. It was the fact that there weren't a lot of jobs, that were not farm-related jobs, that weren't out chasing chickens and then smelling like chicken poop when you were done with the day. The fact that the entertainment was having to figure it out on your own, bringing guns over to your friend's house and shooting on their property. Heck, you do that nowadays, people are calling the police.
Yeah.
How dare you let your child have a gun?
We didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
It was just, we weren't in the city.
We went horseback riding, remember?
Yeah.
Staying on the other side of Prairie Creek,
Yeah.
and horseback
Yeah.
riding was a big thing.
Yeah. And then drive into Dallas to get a 12-pack of beer, and then it was legal at 18,
And drive all the way back.
and drive all the way back.
You drank 6 of them.
Yeah. So a different time than the concrete back in the day, stopping at Alma. See, for me, it was at Coit. For me back in the day, it was Coit Road.
Getting back to that, when they lowered everything, the voting age, the drinking age, and all that, when they brought that down, there was a period of time there that I think most of everything changed. As far as mental, the way people thought about different things and what have you. And then all of a sudden it became a curse, like, oh my God, I can't believe you're out doing that. Where it was completely normal 2 years prior to that.
Right.
And I think that they did a real good deal in modifying that to where they're getting the age appropriateness, an 18-year-old buying beer and what have you for a 16-year-old or something like that. I mean, it's good to see that they're getting it out of the schools.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good deal.
Well, and even the smoking in the schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I really feel like, and I know I can speak for every one of us here, that was a very unique time. I mean, and I know kids that are going to be watching this are going to be their mouths are going to be just jaws dropping, because
Yeah.
we really had it. We had an awesome life back then. We really did.
Well,
We had one school bus, I remember, it was bus number 1.
Narrow that
And
down.
Mr. Thunderbird was the driver, the only driver, Mr. Thunderbird, and he had a son, Anson Thunderbird, that was a
Anson.
musician. Remember Anson Thunderbird?
Yeah.
And that was, we'd sit and wait for the bus. He would pick us up last because he knew we had milking duties and all that. He was so sweet. Give us a little extra time, but then we got dropped off last, so sometimes it would be 5:30 before we'd get home.
Right.
Back home.
And then it's time to go milk cows again. But that one bus, Mr. Thunderbird, and that was Plano. It was just so small and so intimate.
Yeah.
And
We used to literally run. I used to literally run from home to school, and then run to Plano High School. We'd cut through the graveyard,
Yeah.
and we'd always stop because they had a fountain.
Yeah.
Pump fresh well
Did
water.
a real well
Get a
water.
couple handfuls of water, and then finish our run to school. I mean, it was a different time.
It really was a different
We
time.
used to lie in the graveyard with a fishing string attached to a pocketbook right on the curb, and we'd hang out at Keith's house, and people would go to pick up the pocketbook, and we'd pull the fishing string, and the lady freak out and jump in her car and run.
That's the kind of fun we had back
We
then.
would ride our
pocketbooks, yeah.
bikes up to the Exxon on Avenue K, and then leave our bikes there and get the school bus and go to Mendenhall.
So
Amazing.
as we close things up today, treat it like a time capsule. What would you leave behind for the kids and the teachers that will watch this 5 years from now, 10 years from now, next year? What advice would you leave those kids? I mean, because you have a lot of wisdom built on self-creation during a time that didn't offer all of this babysitting material, the internet, YouTube, Disney Plus, Netflix, Amazon Prime,
Oh, video games that are
laptops,
unbelievable, yeah.
iPads, Xboxes. And I don't know that anybody goes outside anymore. So let's start with Coach Quigley and just kind of go around the pack. What would you leave as a piece of advice for these young people?
Well, I'll tell you, the biggest thing is friends and family. Spend more time with your friends and even more time with your family. Because now, what I realize is now that mom and dad are gone, you don't have them to talk to. And we used to rush home to be dinner, and then you see, why did I have to rush home for dinner? Well, there's a reason, because they wanted you to sit around the dinner table like we were saying. And you sure do miss those times now that you don't have them. We don't have to spend time at the dinner table, put the phones away, turn off the TV, and be with your family around the dinner table. I remember dinner tables at the Melson's house. If we didn't sit down and wait for Miss Melson when she brought the dinner to the table, we had to acknowledge, man, this looks really good, or it wasn't going to be the next night. You're going to be on your own. But just little things like that. Friends and family are important. And that's what, when we started putting together the list of people, I wanted, number one, people that could tell good stories, and I think I did that. And second of all, they're all such good friends.
Well, I think the very first thing that I would advise the kids in this generation right now is that first of all, they're missing out on a very, very, very key ingredient to human relationships with each other. And that is get away from anything that has to do with a screen or a keyboard. I'm talking about that phone right there. I'm talking about the internet. I'm talking about all of your games, all the, Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook and all. If they got rid of that, if they took some time to discipline themselves to get away from some of that and just have literally normal interaction like we did, I really think it would make a difference in their lives. Period. Johnny?
Basically stole mine.
Yeah,
I'm just
well,
saying, do things for yourself. Look around before you make a decision. Everybody else is doing this. Is it really the right thing for you to do? I mean, today, so many people. I've got family just kind of follow people around, and I said, you don't have any ideas of your own. Your thought process is nothing. I mean, you got to really change in the long run because, again, do it for yourself, not for the group at large. If you know what I'm saying. So.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with the get rid of anything with the screen. I have a 8-month-old granddaughter that you have to get to pictures, but she knows how to do this. My 1.5-year-old granddaughter knows how to take her mom's phone and FaceTime me on her own. And then my grandsons, who I keep during the summer, are 9 and 11. It's like pulling teeth to get them to go on a bike ride with me because they don't want to put down their telephone, which they shouldn't even have a telephone. We didn't. First thing we ever had was pagers.
Yep.
And we were probably adults.
Or CBs, remember?
Oh,
We
CB
did have
radios,
CBs.
yeah.
Oh my
We
God.
did have handles
Remember
at
the first
Plano.
car telephones about this big in that
Yeah.
bag
Yeah.
and that box?
Yeah.
Yes.
CB radio.
Or they were
Mounted
connected,
right into the
Curlicue
car.
here.
Yeah.
Curlicue.
Connected.
and they were about this big.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a brick.
And I think I would say, learn to think for yourself, trust your gut, really invest in relationships with people, not surface things, not like they're saying what you see on social media, but really take time to invest in relationships and trust yourself and trust your gut and don't believe everything you hear and, expand your knowledge.
Educate
But-
yourself.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I have something to say about that. I think the younger, not the little kids, but the younger adults, they're all getting their news from Facebook and Instagram, and they aren't getting the correct news.
Right.
Nobody
Yeah.
reads a newspaper.
Well,
Nobody
You
reads
need
a
to
not
make sure you get with
They
Julie
literally
because
get
she
their
does
news
send a
from
lot
who
of
they
good stuff
follow.
on President Trump. She'll share you with you.
But I want to also add something to that too. That I in my own experience, there has been more relationships damaged between family and friends by them relying totally on texting to communicate.
Yes.
About emails and text. If you want to say something to somebody like that, you had to leave a nasty letter on their locker at school, or you had to, you didn't write people dirty letters back. You told them to
I'll
yourself.
say you went face to face most
Right.
of the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Go
Well,
ahead,
and
Rick.
I think back then you weren't brutal to each other, and now they're just brutal to each other. They're just the things that people say and think it's okay to say. I think we started losing it kind of when they took prayer out of school. I'm going to go
Yeah.
there because
Yes.
if you don't have God in your life, if you don't have a foundation,
True.
then everything falls apart. And that's when it started falling apart. First it was the prayer they took out, and then it was the Pledge of Allegiance that we used to stand around the flagpole. I mean, you were committed to something and you were passionate about things. And now there's not, everybody's self-serving instead of serving others and serving the community. And, back then the competition was for service, and now it's just, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
And it's a sad state, and I hope that, I hope that the kids will go back. And it's just like, we're enjoying the history of Plano and the heritage, and we're proud of it. And you need to be proud of your community and where you grew up and the school and your coaches and your teachers that were so fundamental in forming the people that we are now. Along with the parents, not only our parents, but if you went to a friend's house, their parents were going to discipline you too.
Oh, yeah.
And nowadays they're all like scared to death that, if they're even home to parent, but they don't dare step out,
Right.
out of that comfort zone. And kids just need to get back to
Discipline.
basics. The phones and all that has taken us away from the basics. And
Mhm.
there's so much fun. There's so many good things. It's wholesome just to have the basics. But it's going to take somebody to step outside of it to go, hey, this is okay.
Yeah.
Too comfortable.
Yeah, it's definitely a different time when you start thinking of, cultural relationships and you're thinking about all this stuff. It almost seems to me like without relationships, which is very big. If you haven't built relationships with people and you notice that your sphere of influence is 3 or 4 people, and I know people say, well, those are good friends because it's small and it's a network. You should have those 3 or 4, but expand your relationships. I mean, because you're going to find out in business and life and everything else, if you don't have those relationships, then things can go south in a hurry. And I think some of this research what you hear, research what goes on, and make sure that you can make an informed decision. Don't just follow along, and then that ends up hurting relationships. I think that is so big. If everybody's guilty of it, but if that's all you do, my gosh, get a life.
Yeah, no
You
kidding.
know? Seriously,
Well, and I just want to say one thing about that. If you have friends that have differing opinions, that's okay.
Yeah, no
Yes.
doubt.
That'll
You
make who you
don't
are.
all have to agree on the same thing, and just because a family member or a good friend doesn't feel the same way about that you do about something, that's okay.
Yeah.
Let people have their own opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good when there's
Yeah,
different opinions.
It
Yeah.
is. You
David?
can learn.
Time for you.
Well, from all of it, I would say just get out there and surround yourself with family and a lot of friends. Stay off of the glass, so to speak, and just enjoy life. Come up with your own ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Could you
Get everybody in
imagine?
here.
Could you imagine you instead of playing softball, spend all your time on? I mean, David would play 100 games a month of professional softball. I mean, that's just
7 nights a week.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the big picture too. Will we know each other today if we were on this all the time? We'd probably never know each
No,
other.
we wouldn't have the
Yeah.
relationships that we have right now if we'd have had things like that. I mean, this y'all are family to me. It'd be literally. I wonder how many kids can actually say that now. They look if they sat in this room 40, 50 years later with the same setup. How many of them could really look at each other and say, "Hey, these people are literally like family"? I mean,
Not to bring on a downer side of it, but be accountable for who you are. You know what I'm saying? And this really aggravates me because it drags me into a bad spot. And again, it's about relationship. If you don't have a relationship with people, then you can say and do whatever you want because you're not associated with anybody. You don't have a relationship with anybody. So you can try to destroy what other people have built up for years. And this cancel culture and stuff that we have going on right now, it's just freaking crazy because you're not doing anything but setting it back. You're not advancing anything. You're setting it back. It's a constant doldrum. Get out of that. What the heck have you done?
No.
Don't sit around here and blame me because you don't have what I have and all that kind of crap. You have had more opportunities. Get your butt out there, make a name for yourself.
Now you're
How
going
do you
with
really
a
feel,
group of
Marty?
people here, and one of the guys I tried to get to come with here, and it might be for another whole segment because it'll be on their whole new topic, would be because these people all went through the time. I moved here from New Jersey, and we never used the N-word, or we never had, but they grew up in a time when that was it, and schools were segregated. And we had a guy, Ricky Matthews, who was going to come with us, and he was part of the old Douglas School, and he was going to school as the first black kid in the school, and what it felt like for them, and this and that. We saw him, we talked for hours at Mr. Clo's funeral, and I had coached their sons, and Gene's married to Ricky, and we had great talking, but I just didn't think it would be appropriate to have that. But it'd be a whole different segment to
Be a
talk
great
about
segment.
what kids went through during that time.
Yeah.
Well, see, when they
It'd be great
desegregated
segment.
here, I was in second grade, and everybody knew everybody. It wasn't like, oh my God, where are you from? I mean, my grandmother lived on the
We all
Avenue
played
G.
sports together.
Yeah, and the Douglas community was right down the street, if you want to say that. But we never looked at it really. We didn't really care. I mean, we knew them all. We were buddies with all of them. Like I say, and we all were in the same school. There were a couple of them that would come to school, and they would have Crisco sandwiches for lunch. Literally, that's what they would have. So we'd get our money together and buy them a lunch. I mean, but that's just what we did back in those days. It wasn't the South everywhere, if you know what I'm saying. I
Yeah, the
mean,
blacks and
we cared.
We
I
all
mean-
got along with the
Yeah.
black kids. We did. I mean, they were friends. We didn't think
Well,
of
that's
them.
exactly what Ricky said, and I'll finish by saying that he said no, they didn't see the differences. The adults saw the differences.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of times what happened. And I'll finish with what we were talking about advice, and I do that Brooks Wallace Award, like I was saying, and I get to interview and visit with players and kids that are 18, 19, 20 years old. These kids nowadays are pretty sharp. Let's not narrow it down with what a few bad kids are saying and what a few people are saying
2%.
to bunch them in a whole group. We got a lot of good kids out there now. Right, CJ and
Yeah,
Carter
got
James?
a lot.
Oh, man, you
Yeah.
betcha.
A
You
lot.
betcha. Well, and you know, that is a great next segment, I think. Coach, I think you've already produced your next segment, right? Is to discuss what that was like with the Douglas community having a segregated school and having its own separate playgrounds. And, you know, did white kids go over and play in the Douglas community
We
at the
did.
basketball
I did.
courts? And
We
did
did.
black kids come over and play in the softball fields or the sandboxes of the other side of Plano, wherever that, you know, the further east side of Plano? That's a great next topic. But
And we
this is
swam in the
definitely-
same pools and we drank from the same water fountains.
Yeah.
Period. And we rode the same buses and we ate together in restaurants.
So again, great segue into the next segment. I think introducing again that segment of history between 1970 and today, because again, the last we have the oral history is 48 to 60,
Well,
Yeah.
and so this
When
is
did
going to
it-
fill
when did it
that
happen
gap
in Plano?
in.
65, 66?
yeah, 65 affirmative
And
action.
then they ended up winning state in
Yeah.
65.
Now,
But
of
there were
course,
only,
none of you.
I don't want to put a duster on this, but there were only two black guys on the team. They were good. They were really good, but there were only two players on the team.
But again, I go back. You know, the only thing I don't remember hearing you say that was awesome was Queen.
I did.
Did you?
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
hear.
yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
hear
that's
Queen.
mentioned Queen.
I'm like, Queen was like the age of rock and roll. They
Yeah.
busted
Yeah.
open for
Yeah.
everybody.
We are
There
the
was a
champions.
running back.
Yeah.
So, but with that, I want to thank you, Coach Quigley, and I want to thank everybody
Oh,
that
yeah,
came
this
out
has been
today
great.
to pass down this oral history. I don't think that we realize how important passing down the oral history of our town is to kids that have no idea. They think that they can just walk in, and we had all these restaurants, had all this infrastructure, had a great police department, had great parks. I mean, we have great
Everything
parks
was
in
built.
Plano.
Yeah, everything had to be built.
You know, and it was
started
built.
somewhere.
It was built on y'all and y'all's families.
Yep.
When there was only 2,000 people here, and the roads ended at
Well,
Alma.
that goes back to economic development. You know, I think that was one of the things that Plano is very fortunate in that late 60s, early 70s, is that there was a brain power here that came in with economic development, and they sketched out what they wanted it
Well, they
to
knew
be.
what they were doing, though, because
Yeah.
they'd bring the TIs here and they'd
Yeah.
bring the big
Yeah.
corporate
Yeah.
people here,
Yeah.
which they did back
And,
in those
and
days.
how many houses you're going to need? What is the need? You know, where right now we're feeling the stresses from the
Sure.
east and the west, saying, you know, we got to get out of here. You know, this thing's sinking.
But
Well,
it's
that's
but
like
it's
people do their research, and when my dad moved here in '73, everything led toward North Dallas. and Plano.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the reputation it had, and the schools.
And
it
the
had.
schools and everything, yeah.
Reputation is a huge thing.
Schools,
really is.
schools were I mean, that's what drew my dad to Plano. was
Yep.
how high quality the schools were.
Well, you know, and a name I don't know that I heard either was Dr. Wayne Hendricks.
Hendricks, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, he was the superintendent that I feel really
Oh, yes.
took Plano into
We'll put Plano on the map.
that next era.
Yeah, I
Yes.
said,
Yeah.
you
You know.
know, Dr. Henderson, Mr. Newton, and
Yep.
Yeah.
Chief, and all those guys. Yeah,
But you know, what people don't understand is Dr. Hendricks really didn't retire, but about 15 years ago.
And he would walk the halls. He would
would.
be there
Yeah.
hands on
Well,
with us.
as a teacher there, he would come hand deliver your birthday card to you every year and shake your hand.
Wow, that's
And he
cool.
he said, Coach, I have a hard time calling you Coach because I remember watching you run up and down the basketball court.
But you know, it was relationships like that, and
Yeah.
we want to be able to pass those on. And so, by you being here today, and I know some of you are from out of town, some
We
of you
really
may have stayed
appreciate
in
this.
town, but you're passing on a vital, important part of Plano's history. And so, with that, JP, Kathy, and the crew are excited to bring this to you. We will get this thing edited up and put it together, and we're going to air it on one of our days.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll get it out to everybody, and hopefully we'll get it into the schools and let teachers use it as a teaching tool for sure. So for JP, Kathy, and the crew, and the not ready to be the old timers of Plano, segment number 1, we are going to go ahead and send ourselves out.